So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Now I'm so confused if I'm okay. We'll go with this. Okay. So labor of love is kind of really what this whole mission and ministry is about. And I just think that's good play on words. So here is our family. This is our updated picture. So um, Payson is, well, I'll tell you more about all of them, but I guess this is the only picture that I have with Josh in it. So this year will be 21 years, which is crazy, especially if you're like Mary and have met Josh. Just kidding. And Lee's gonna get on here and she's also met Josh. So no, but this has been something that we met when I was 16 and he was 18. And I was like, I'm gonna live in the African bush in a round hut with like like a grass roof and all that. So if you don't want to do that, don't talk to me. And he's pretty quiet normally. And so he didn't talk much, but he kept hanging around the friend group. And yeah, we kind of were high school sweethearts. He had just graduated, so technically, I guess high school sweetheart. But um and we've always talked about missions and that was our hope and goal. And we've done ministry and missions for the last 9 years. But it's looked very different than what we thought. A lot of short-term trips, and so this will be our first like long term, hopefully. And so yeah, I guess I have them. Well, okay. So I did have a slide about Josh. There's Josh. So here's the boys. So Kason's on the left, and that is his fiance Carly. So he has an aviation degree, and he is with Ethnos 360 Bible Institute, and that's how they met. So her dad runs an aviation department for Ethnos 360 in Indonesia. But she has dual citizenship right now because she was actually born here when they were doing missions training. So, um, they're trying to figure it out. There's a lot of like, where are we getting married? They say here, her parents say Indonesia, but he does have to go to Indonesia before they're allowed to get married. So, that's kind of what they're working on at this point of when and how that's going to happen. And then Gage graduated last May, and he has a full-time job with all of the adult benefits, which is really cool and such a answer to prayer. So the two of them will be staying here and not going with us. And then Holden is our other boy. He's the only boy going, and he is 12. And then here's our girls. So Emery is 14 and Selah is 8. She's kind of what changed all of our missions plans when we started missions 9 years ago when we found out we were expecting her. And this is little Aisley, who turned 1 in Istanbul, Turkey airport on our way to Manila in March. And then we'll be back before she turns 2. So we'll be back in the Philippines before she turns 2. And Emery the other day is like, how many birthdays will Aisley spend overseas? Like, when will she have an American birthday? And I'm like, I don't know. That'd be really interesting that, she could go years without having a US birthday. So, um, yeah, so Emery is the oldest. She got to go. Emery and Aisley actually went with us when we went in March so that they could, well, I had to take the baby. But Emery went so she could get a feel for the people and the culture. And her friends were so sweet. They planned a whole day yesterday of all her favorite things. So she's got like 4 best friends. So there's like this group of 5 girls, and they like picked her up, and the whole thing was a surprise. And they did like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 things, like all of her favorite restaurants, food, uh, like shopping stores, and they went ice skating, and they went to the mall, and did a Build-A-Bear, and they all built similar but different bears, and they all named them something that had to do with Emery. And so even at 14, she has this cute little Build-A-Bear though that she can take with her, and she's super excited, but also super sad to leave all her best friends. But yeah, so we're praying. A big prayer for us is that especially Emery will find her people really quickly, and she won't feel like she's a million miles away from everything. But technology is great in the fact that she FaceTimes her friends all the time now on the phone, so it won't be that different. It's just, limited time zones. But so how did we get here? So this is some different representation. So when we in 2019, no, 2016, we were headed to Nicaragua. and we were going to work at a children's surgical medical center. And we sold everything, moved into missions housing, and unexpectedly were expecting Selah. And it was a big surprise because in birth work, well, I wasn't really in birth work then, but I still thought I knew how it all worked, but I might have had my dates off. And so that was a huge surprise. And so that was during Zika, and our missions org was like, you can't go to Nicaragua during Zika while you're pregnant, all these things. So the Lord opened a door for us to go to the most diverse square mile in America, which is Clarkston, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. And it's 1.4 square miles and has every people group that's ever been resettled into the US represented. The high school had 157 languages spoken. They knew of 90 known unreached people groups in this 1.4 square miles. They had every world religion. It was a very special place. And people actually come and study this place because of how many different people groups live pretty much in harmony together. So this is one of the Hindu temples that they have there in Atlanta. These are some of the women. I became a doula right in that transition. We went to missions training school, which was 6 really intense months. And then during that time, I became a doula and then started working with an organization called Embrace Refugee Birth Services. And this is a picture of some of the ladies down at the bottom, and they come alongside of immigrants and refugees through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And I was their volunteer coordinator, and they taught childbirth ed in like 6 or 7 different languages. And I got to support a lot of women that way. And it was just like combining all my passions together. And so while we were there, we got to take some short-term trips overseas. I got to support a birth in Thailand with missionary friends, and we're like, okay, Lord, where do you want us to go? We actually ended up what was supposed to be 6 months turned into 3 years down in Atlanta, and so we were ready to go. And he said, go back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I said, for how long? Like, please don't keep me there forever. And he said, go back and start an organization to support immigrants, refugees, and teen moms. And so we came back to where we're from, Northeast Indiana. And I started a nonprofit organization that did just that. And it was similar to what Embrace does in Atlanta. And through that, um, we have the largest Burmese refugee population outside of Thailand in Fort Wayne. And so I knew I wanted to work with them. And I know that they have some believers within the Karen Burmese population. And so I started working with different churches that worked with the Burmese and Karen. And through that, we knew that the best way to reach any people group is from within their own people. And so I was really praying about how to do that. Doula trainings aren't necessarily very good at being translatable and interpreted and cross-cultural. And so the Lord actually opened up a door for us to not just have the nonprofit, but also a training organization to be able to train women from every community, every culture, every language. And so through the nonprofit, we started doing that. And we trained up some of the first, right here, actually in the bottom left-hand corner. This is Lame. She might be the first Karen Burmese doula in the world and started to train women within her community. And then I trained up the first Spanish-speaking doula in our area and some of the first doulas of color in our area. And that opened a door to other connections of going to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan and training up doulas, Cape Town, South Africa, and then Manila, Philippines. So this is a picture of Manila in March, and they knew about 20 known doulas in the area of Manila, and Manila is 14 million people. And so to think that it was this new concept in the Philippines to have doulas, and we had 27 come, and some of them were actually midwives. A handful of them were midwives, and they had never learned how to support women in this way. And so they came to learn all the things. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing for the last several 8, 9 years. So there are 3 times in a person's life when they're most open to spiritual things, and that is birth, death, and marriage. And we know that pastors oversee the marriage ceremony, can offer the gospel. They oversee the funeral ceremony and can offer the gospel. And birth is kind of this, it's a season where women can really come alongside of women through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum and really minister them as they build that intimate and close relationship. And we've seen that so much through doulas and training doulas and being a doula. And as we prayed through, Lord, what do you want us to do with the organization and the training? He kept laying on my heart, midwifery, midwifery. And I was like, but I don't really want to be a midwife. I've worked with midwives in the US and I love what they do. Our last birth was a home birth of the midwife. I love midwifery, but I was just like, Lord, I don't know how that fits with me. I don't want to have like a midwifery practice in the US. And so he led us to some open doors to be able to go to the Philippines and meet both physical and spiritual needs there. And so what I had in mind in the beginning is a little different than what we're doing now. But um, yeah, it's really going over there with the opportunity to work with Filipino midwives and to learn international skills. And so I guess the easiest way to put it is in the US, if you know about home births, most home births are CPMs and they do very low risk births with really healthy women. And then you have CNMs, which are certified nurse midwives who are nurses and then they get midwifery degrees as well. And so they can do a lot more than a home birth midwife. They have a lot more scope of practice and can give more drugs and do a lot more things. And so overseas, it's interesting because in the Philippines, I would call it like the middle. So they can serve the low risk, but they can also serve like the medium risk, as they can kind of deal with some things more than what we have. And that is due to like different nutritional issues, lack of testing for certain things in different labs. So they don't necessarily rule people out because they don't have the tools to like figure that out. So they have a lot more hemorrhages, a lot more uh tears, sometimes more shoulder dystocia because of the way that they're positioned, like lots of different things that make them more of a medium risk. And then if you went to like Africa, midwifery there is really more working with the high risk because if they were really low risk, they would stay home and to, birth at home or birth in, their tribes or communities. But if they're really seeking medical attention, they're probably a higher risk. And so there's a bigger scope of practice there. You're doing a lot more things, and you're inducing labors and doing things that you wouldn't do in America. So going to the Philippines I have a lot of experience in America. So this gives me like, I have the low risk. This gives me medium risk. And then hopefully someday we'll go somewhere more like Africa and get high risk when I get more skills so that I can be more helpful to them. So that's really just a way to be able to come alongside women because we want to meet both physical and spiritual needs. It's really hard to share the love of Jesus with a woman who's just lost her baby or can't care for that woman or, whatever that looks like. They're hungry, thirsty. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting both. And this is a great way to do both. So I want to share with you this video. Let me know if can you hear that?
What is a frontier people group?
Yeah, okay.
4,000 years ago, God made a covenant proclaiming that through Abraham's offspring, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. 2,000 years later, Jesus' life, death, and resurrection fulfilled that promise. This news was so important that Jesus gave his followers a mission: go to all nations and proclaim that through him there was a path back to right relationship with God. Ever since that day, God's people have worked toward the fulfillment of that mission. So, now that we've been on mission for 2,000 years, how are we doing at taking the gospel to all peoples? Let's start with some amazing news. Faith in Jesus is spreading at an accelerating rate. At Pentecost, gospel movements were present in places that contained only 2% of the world's population. In 1792, William Carey identified that the gospel had spread through cross-cultural witnesses to places containing 25% of the world's population. In 1974, Ralph Winter estimated that 40% of the world lived in people groups with multiplying communities of believers. And today, global followers of Jesus have increased by 400%, and believers are present and multiplying in people groups containing 75% of the world's population. That means 6 billion people have active Christ followers in their people groups, and thus have at least some access to the gospel. You may have heard about unreached people groups, or UPGs, people groups with fewer than 2% believers and fewer than 5% professing Christians. At the First Lausanne Congress in 1974, It was estimated that 60% of humanity lived in roughly 17,000 people groups without any multiplying communities of believers. Today, that number has decreased to an estimated 4,800 people groups, containing just 25% of the world's population. God's kingdom has advanced more in the past 50 years than in any other period before it. But there's still more work to do. Yes, by God's grace, 40% of the global UPG population now has Christians among them. However, according to the best available research, there has been essentially no progress of the gospel in the remaining 60%. Missiologists call this 60% of UPGs frontier people groups, or FPGs. Right now, there are almost 4,800 FPGs, totaling 25% of the world's population. These 2 billion people still have little to no chance of even meeting a follower of Jesus in their own people group. Less than 0.1% of their population is Christian, and they desperately need pioneer workers to cross language and culture barriers to establish the first multiplying communities of believers among them. Who are these 4,800 frontier people groups? Religiously, 3% of the population of all FPGs are Buddhist, Sikh, and animist. 41% are Hindu, and 56% are Muslim. Geographically, 98% of the global frontier people group population lives in fewer than 70 countries inside the 1040 window, an area of the world between 10 degrees and 40 degrees latitude, containing North Africa, the Middle East, and much of Asia. 70% of that population is concentrated in just South Asia. In fact, more than 50%, half the population of all the FPGs in the world, live in just one country, India. That's 800 million Hindus and 200 million Muslims in one country, waiting to hear about the love of Jesus and join his worldwide family. You may be thinking, if there's so much need and opportunity among them, surely the majority of missionaries are going to frontier people groups. Unfortunately, the opposite is true. 96% of all missionaries work among people groups where 99% of the world's Christians live. Only 3% go to unreached people groups. That leaves just 1% of all missionaries among those 4,800 FPGs. 4,500 workers for 2 billion people. Think about this. India's population of 1.4 billion is nearly equal to all of Africa at 1.5 billion, and more than double that of Latin America at 0.67 billion. Yet India, where half the remaining FPGs are located, receives only 1/10 the cross-cultural workers that are sent to Africa and Latin America. The imbalance is staggering. But how do we balance it? How do we prioritize and strategically engage all people groups, especially the least reached? What if we started with the largest frontier people groups, the ones with a population of more than 10 million? These few dozen groups cover nearly half the population of all FPGs. Then we could engage the frontier groups with a population of more than 1 million. Sending laborers among these few hundred mega people groups would cover about 80% of the FPG population, 1.6 billion people. And many of these larger frontier groups have significant influence over smaller neighboring FPGs and could even potentially engage them through near culture strategies. Right now, there are more than 4 million churches globally. That's 800 churches for every frontier people group. If the global family of Christ keeps the finish line in view and works together strategically, could we see multiplying disciples and fellowships begin to spread throughout every remaining frontier people group in our lifetime? In the next few years? Could we be the generation through which the good news of the kingdom is finally preached to every remaining people group? It's a huge task, but it's possible. And you have a role. God calls all his people to participate in spreading the gospel to all people groups. He calls some to pray. He calls some to mobilize. He calls some to send, and he calls some to go and take the gospel where it has never been preached before. How is God calling you?
Oops. Now, see if I can figure out. There we go. Okay. So now I need to I moved you guys out of the way, but okay. So what does that all mean? So the Philippines, so they use FPG, but UPG is unreached people groups. And so the Philippines has 27 unreached people groups that they know of. And they fall within the 1040 window. And they are more and more of those unreached people groups are moving to Manila to find work. So there's like every article we look up or everything we look up says like 1,400 islands in the Philippines or 7,000 islands in the Philippines. And some islands exist, on at high tide, but not low tide. There's a lot of islands. So there's at least 1,000 islands. Let's call it that. And so there are these unreached people groups all over, but they're moving to Manila to work and find jobs and support their families. And so it's really a very like um, point of contact to be in such a big city. So Manila is the most highly densely populated city in the world with over 14 million in what they call like Metro Manila and like 20 million in what they would call all of Manila. Um, and so there's a huge amount of people there, crazy amount of people and a crazy amount of traffic. But again, there's more and more of these unreached people groups moving into the city or around in the islands in the Philippines. And so, excuse me, so it is quite a strategic place to go. There's a lot of Asian countries with big cities that are big melting pots of Asian communities and culture. So it's not India, but it is part of that 1040 window, and they have a lot of Muslims in the Philippines, and then a lot of Catholics who are more cultural Catholics that don't really know who Jesus is. So this is the Hope Alive Clinic. So this is like half of it. I would say it's twice as big as this, like wide. So what you see right here is the entrance, and then the sliding glass doors over is like the intake area. And then there's like an equal part that's actually where they give birth and do their clinicals. So let me show you. This is us walking from where we were staying about 2 blocks to where the clinic is. That's kind of the neighborhood. It's a very poor borough of Manila. So this is kind of off the road, and we're actually walking to the church, which is kind of just a different avenue from where the clinic is. So the clinic is on the road, but then you get off the road, and these are all houses that they build with whatever they can find. Um, and there's like one little pathway and the sewer on one side of your pathway, and that is Emory as we walked up to the church to do training. So when you walk in, the waiting room here is what they see, and actually they kind of change things around, but they have someone to do intake. This is the birth room, and this is the postpartum room and ultrasound room, I believe. And then there's 4 of these beds, these cots that are next to each other. And that's where they do all of their prenatals. So they kind of do them all simultaneously, which is very unique. And so in America, you go in your room and you wait forever to be seen. But here there's a midwife for each one of these little cots. And they'll see 4 or 5 women at the same time. And, they just ask them all the same questions, and they do funnel height and listen to heart tones. And it's very communal. HIPAA doesn't exist in the Philippines. And so everyone is doing this together. And so that's how they do these massive numbers. So this is literally the pictures of the entire place, but the bathroom. So you have the intake, and you have the outside main room where they do all the prenatals and postpartum checks. And then on the other side of that wall behind where the baby is the birth room and postpartum room. So that's it. They told me the birthing area, I think, and the clinical area is like 600 square feet. So I think the whole thing's like 1,000 square feet. And they see 500 women, 500 births a year, 40 to 50 births a month, and about 60 women can come through for prenatal or postpartum care per day to like um, in their clinic. And so it's a huge amount of women that they serve in this really poor borough. and it is a mission. It is a ministry. Staffs do Bible studies together. Everyone hears of who Jesus is, and it's quite the little setup. So they hosted us when we were there in March to do our doula training. We didn't do the doula training at that building, but down the street at the church. So what is Josh going to do? Well, Josh kind of does the logistics and he kind of does all of the things that need to be done. So when we do trainings and things, he takes care of things. He's usually behind the scenes, but I was doing a training and he was like blowing up all the balls for me in the tub and stuff, and I was like taking pictures of them. But so we're gonna kind of flip-flop for a little while. So the first 3 months we'll be in Manila at this very busy clinic, and so I'm gonna try to get as many births as I can and as many clinicals as I can to get through phase one of my midwifery clinic goals, and Josh will be doing the homeschooling and taking care of all of that. The place that we're staying has daily ministries and outreach and things like that that him and the kids can jump in on. They do like community feedings where they go to different, even really much poorer areas around the city or outside of the city, and they feed the community. There's orphanages that they're involved that they have, and they have several different ministries. So they have like a little kid, like a newborn and infant home, and then they have like bigger kids homes, and they have the school and the church and several different things, and they have teams that constantly come through. So March, we actually are going to be swamped there, and I think they might put us all in one room for a month, which will be really interesting, the six of us. So our older two kids are staying behind, so it'll be Emery down, but the six of us being in like one little kind of like a hotel room. So we'll see how that goes. But they have constant ministry going on and things like that. So outside of school, they can jump in on those teams and things like that. And then long term, his goal will be to work with the husbands of midwives and help them to have self-sustainable jobs, whether that's small farms or small businesses, to be able to support their wives working and doing missions midwifery, or to offset some of that. So if you go outside of like the major cities, midwives get paid very, very little to nothing. And so they need to be supplemented somehow and have, their husband be able to provide all the income, or get donations or things like that, because if you're working with the poorest of the poor, they can't pay the fees that you would need to be able to be sustained. Um, so this is him at our training, doing some of the sound and things like that. This is our awesome group. So this is the church down the street a little bit farther, and then above it is actually a school, and then kind of next to it, close to right where we were, actually all those houses that we were walking through that were makeshift, they are clearing some of them and helping all of them like relocate to somewhere else and have even better housing. And they're actually building I think it's a two, maybe a three-story hospital there. So this clinic also has an EMS, which is amazing because that's really uncommon. So they have ambulances that they have, and so they have the maternity home and ambulances, and they will soon have a hospital. And they broke ground on that, but it should be finished in the next 2 years. So that will be, I think, 21 or 22 beds, I think is what they said. But they'll be offering surgeries and things like that. But it'll give them an opportunity to serve more people with more services. But they'll still have the maternity clinic. So I'm kind of a nerd. So here's some of my math and the goal. So the goal really is to become a midwife so I can train more midwives. I've been training doulas for the last 4 years. I've trained about 300 plus doulas from about 25 different states and about 27 different countries. And so seeing such an impact of birth work ministry, I want to keep teaching and training more workers to do that. And so as we transition, I'm currently training on Monday nights, and I'll continue to train on Monday nights, even in the Philippines, except it'll be Tuesday morning there when it's Monday night here. So here's some numbers of kind of the heart behind why go. So over the course of 10 years, if I continue to train doulas, and out of all the doulas I train actively, 40 of them are super active. They take 10 clients a year, which isn't, a ton, but doable when they have littles. So that's about 400 families that are served. If I continue training 40 active doulas a year, and they touch 10 lives a year. So 400. As a doula or a midwife, personally, if I stayed as a midwife or a doula and worked full time, I would take about 35 to 40 clients a year. And over the course of 10 years, it would be 350 women and families. So if we had if I trained doulas who were active and there was 400 of them and I took on my own clients and was active, that's about 350. So over the course of 10 years, about 750 families served that way if I'm working kind of one-on-one. But if I train doulas and they take on 10 and 10 clients each over the course of 10 years, that's 4,000 families reached. If I train midwives across three clinics, so if I start training some midwives that work at a clinic that reach about 400 families a year, that's 4,000 families will reach. And then if, 4 years later, I go to another clinic and work there for a few years, that's 2,400 more families that will be reached. And then move to a third clinic and train them for a few years. That's another 1,200. So altogether, over 11,000, closer to 12,000 families that will be served over the course of 10 years if I continue to train and pour into doulas and pour into midwives instead of having my own personal practice. And so I really think that that's like our why. That's like the art of multiplication, right? It's like sharing the gospel. And we know that if I can train up, these are actually all midwives in these photos. Those are all, yeah, our 5 midwives that were we have one other midwife who's not in here, but these are the midwives that were at our training, and they touch hundreds of lives. And so if I can continue to pour into midwives, if I can train up more Christian midwives to use birth work as a ministry, then instead of only touching a few lives over a decade, we can touch thousands, tens of thousands of lives by pouring into more, just like pouring into and discipling people well, who will then go on to disciple more people well. This is just a different form of discipleship because that is in essence what we're doing. So how can you get involved in that? So you can join our newsletter and prayer team. We need so much more support prayer-wise. That's really what drives any ministry. And like I said, praying for our kids, especially Emery, that she'll find her people in those weird teen years, that's so important. Joining us through monthly partnership. So we are at 83% of what we need monthly. And we are leaving in like 10 days, 11 days, 10 days. 9 days we go to Chicago, 10 days we're on the airplane. And 74% of what we need one-time gifts. And so what that looks like is a round trip tickets, visas, and then getting over there and setting up house and home, getting a vehicle at some point. And so yeah, those are the ways. So we are completely, well, not completely, I guess. We are supported through monthly supporters who are partners, in our ministry. And we have donors that give between $25 and $250 a month. And they want to be a part of really touching the lives of growing families through meeting the physical and spiritual needs. And then we have Ascending Church that also supports us. And then I continue to train doulas virtually. And so that is a part of our missions money as well that keeps us going on the field. So yeah, so be a part of changing her birth story by joining us and joining our family's ministry, which is Created to Birth. So I am going to read the chat because I cannot multitask when it comes to the chat. So let me read that, and then you guys can tell me what other questions you have. Jess, I'm so glad you got on. And if you guys want to add like where you guys are located, because you kind of, oh, yeah, 2 of you are really close to each other. Or Jess and Lee are actually pretty close to each other, I think. You couldn't see the pictures? Okay, I don't know.
It's my bad, Shanna, because I don't
Okay.
use this thing well, and I accidentally clicked off, but I figured it out. It's okay.
Okay, good. Because yeah, I don't know what I'm doing
Oh,
here.
you did it right. It's me.
Yeah, so we have you can reach us through missionstream.org is our sending agency, and we're on there under Bradley's, but I can also send that information to you as well. Yeah. Let me actually, while you guys tell me things, I can send you a link. So I have Like I said, it's the writing and multitasking. But let me see if I can jump. I don't know if I can. Okay. Somebody talk to me while I figure out these. It won't let me. All right. I think it's backslash Bradley, but if you go there and just type in Bradley, our picture will come up. And then we have a go give, send, go for our one time. And I can send you guys those as well because I didn't think to like have them somewhere to give to you. But yeah, we the one times go through Give, Send, Go because they take a much smaller percentage. But yeah, our long-term monthly supporters give through a mission stream. And yeah, that's a big gist of what we do. So what questions do you ladies have? So I was telling Mary this before, but I will tell you that we originally were going to go to the Philippines to be part of this amazing missions midwifery program, but it's a 3-year program, super intensive. It combines midwifery with missions, and it's just an amazing program. They changed it up this last fall, just a few months ago, and so it was going to be super intense. And I actually only need like a handful of classes to finish my midwifery training. And so as we talked as a family and prayed through it, it didn't make sense for me to start over a whole 3-year program. We had done the missions training and I have almost all my midwifery training. And so we decided to just focus on the clinicals and do that part because that's what I need. So we are actually going to stay in Manila and not go through that full program, which like is breaking my heart because it's such an amazing program. But it just didn't make sense. And so we have a place in Manila at the missions compound and within that ministry that we can stay. They feed us, give us housing. I can walk to the clinic whenever I want for like 3 months. And then after that, we're not really sure. So we could potentially stay there if they offer us a longer term placement. But that's really up to the staff. After, we've been there a month, they'll have those communications and things. But if not, we have a couple other feelers out for some places in the Philippines as well as Mexico and Africa. And so we're just praying, Lord, and he told me a long time ago, and I'm just stubborn, but he said, just be faithful and take that next step, and then I'll show you the next thing. Even though I like to plan and I like to know, and with kids, I'd really like to be able to tell them like this is what we're doing. But he said, I will tell you when it's time. Which, yeah. So this is a growing period of faith for me. Like raising support and partnership and moving and getting rid of everything, going to the other side of the world isn't enough. He's like, wait on me. And so that is what I'm doing. So I know he has a place for us. He's always been faithful and everything else, and his plans are always better than what I try to figure out on my own. So I'm just waiting on that timing. It's just really hard. But I do believe it'll probably stay in Asia, even though I talked to someone on Friday who said, hey, how do you feel about Bangladesh? And I was like, actually, yeah, we've been to India. We know some people from Bangladesh. Like I'm not opposed to that. It would be a hospital and not a birth center, so a little different. But I keep having people today. I had someone reach out to me and she said, I have a connection in an Asian country as well. So we're just praying through what that looks like. But we have a 2.5-year window. So Emery is a freshman in high school. So we have until the fall of 27, so like August, September of 27, to get in all my births, finish my classes, and then return to the US. And then Emery will get her driver's license. She'll get to do senior year here. She'll get to see her friends, visit colleges, do all those things. And I will study for my licensure and take my exams and things like that. And so then after that, wherever the Lord leads us, I hope it'll be somewhere more permanent where I can go and train up more midwives. So we're not sure again what that looks like, but 2.5 years is a pretty good normal. 3 years is really the standard, but I have a lot of the work already done. So yeah, being able to fulfill that in 2.5 years. So the goal is to be overseas for 2.5 years wherever we can to get as much hands-on experience as I can, to learn as much as I can on how to be an international midwife, but as well as how to train others in a cross-cultural situation. So that's the hope. That's the Shanna plan, but open to whatever the Lord kind of leads in that. And yeah, just excited to take that next step and see what he does with that. So yeah. What questions do you guys have?
I don't have questions. I
Yeah.
just think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing. And for those of you on here, Shanna came to visit us in India. And so it's just been super fun to hear this whole entire story. And she's also walked me through a couple births too, like over online. So I'm just super excited for you guys, like super stoked. And I did not realize that you through the program would be able, like, I was thinking you were just in Manila the whole entire time, like after. So I just think it's awesome that you're going to have all these different opportunities to go all over. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
but definitely praying for you guys and for the kids and all of that because that's a huge, definitely huge thing. So,
Yeah, I think I mentioned,
all
well, I
right,
didn't
somebody
mention
actually has
you, but
questions on your chat.
yeah, I did mention like coming over to India, I think before you jumped on, but and Clarkston and all of those things. But um yeah. So, Mary, it costs, so like they have PhilHealth. So PhilHealth is interesting. So it's like their national health care, but if you don't go to a hospital to get at least one prenatal and you go into labor, they can turn you away. So if you have an established care, even if it was just once, they will turn you away. If they go to like a clinic, like a birth center, and they still haven't gone and done that one prenatal, and there's an emergency and they go to the hospital, they can turn them away. And not just once, like two, three, four, five, they can all turn them away for whatever they want. Lack of payment. So if for some reason the PhilHealth they don't qualify or whatever it looks like, they don't have it. So for lack of payment, if they think that they need a C-section and they can't afford a C-section, if they didn't establish care, whatever they want. And so women will be turned away, can be turned away, and have been turned away. And the director at this clinic told me that 1 in 3 times that a woman cannot find a place to birth and can't birth like at a hospital, they give up and they go home and birth. She said that there's about a 30% mortality rate for mom or baby, that they just see women and babies just dying way too much from being turned away from a hospital and having nowhere else to go. And home birth is illegal in the Philippines, like to attend them. But there are some midwives who will go and attend them because they just are so tired of seeing moms and babies just dying because the hospitals refuse them. And some of the birth centers have very strict regulations, and they don't want to lose their licensure, and can't serve anyone. And so it's really hard there because I'm assuming you're all in America, and
Right.
to think you can be turned away, from a hospital in labor is just it's hard to understand. I can't understand, which is why they're building a hospital so that no one has to ever be turned away, that they will care for all of them, and not worry about turning them away because they can't afford an emergency C-section. So on one hand, it doesn't cost anything, but sometimes it does cost if you need certain labs or an ultrasound costs. Not a ton, but again, we're working with like really, really low income. And this year alone, so 2024, they had like 6 tsunamis come through and just wipe people out in the same places, just like flood everything just over and over and over. It was crazy to watch it um happen because yeah. And so just really hard places with hard stuff. And it's I've been to a lot of places in the world and I've never seen wealth and poverty overlap so much. Like you can have all these like really nice giant big houses and like really nice businesses, and if you go behind them or between them, you'll have makeshift homes that people just build. So like, in America it's kind of like segregated where you have like rich and medium income and poor, and they're kind of whatever. And there it's like if you can build somewhere, you build somewhere. And so you can have like a very expensive house, and then like a whole bunch of the places that we were walking through have just built out of whatever we can find, and then have another big house and a Starbucks. Like they have a three, was it three? It is only two, a two-story Starbucks. So they have this like giant two-story Starbucks, which looked like any other Starbucks, kind of disappointing. But and then behind it is like slums. Like it's just bizarre to me. Like I did see that in India, but not like this was so like rich and poor, just like everywhere. So yeah. So there can be cost to it. C-sections, I believe, are costs, but like normal prenatal care and like prenatal vitamins and things like that, some of those things are free. But anything like an ultrasound or surgery, I think all those things charge. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, because I can, Lee, do you want to pray for our family as we head out and um yeah, finish the packing, the moving, the support raising, and really for my kids to have people and for us to have a permanent place to finish up first.
Yes, I
Awesome.
would love to. Father, I just thank you so much for um, your plans that you have created for us and our families before the foundation of the earth, and the good plans that you have for us to walk in and to fulfill for your glory. And I thank you for the Bradley family. I thank you for um, each and every child and Josh and Shanna, God. I just pray over their family that you would um, just protect them, guard them, cover them completely as they are getting ready to embark on a new phase of this of their walk with you and their journey in serving you. I just thank you so much, Lord, that you have put in their hearts both gifts and wisdom, and then a heart to take that to the ends of the earth. It is incredible, and it is so awesome to see. Um, and just all the ways and having had Shanna walk with me through these things, God, it is going to be such a blessing that she will be able to pour into all these different midwives and just anyone that she's going to work with, patients, whatever. Um, but God, I just pray that as she is a wife, as she is a mother, um, that is a lot to balance. And so, God, I just pray for your blessing. I pray for your peace. I pray for your perfection of the things that concern us. I thank you for your promise in Psalm 138 that you say that you will perfect that which concerns us. And there are so many things that concern wives and mothers, God, but I just thank you that you will help us and you walk with us and that you gently lead us. And God, I just pray that in all the crazy of the last few days in the States, all of the things getting ready, all of the things that are going to be there getting there, all of the things getting established there. There's so many things, God, but you are with us and you're for us every single step if we are just take the moment to just realize that you are there every single time. And so I just pray that for Shanna and for each and every one of their kiddos and for Josh as well, God, that you would guard their hearts, guard their minds, and you would just keep them in perfect peace, that they are just walking with you this entire time. They are literally just trying to use their lives to honor you and their gifts to honor you. And I pray for all the people that they will connect with once they first land. Please, Lord, you are so faithful to provide the people, the exact people that you want to walk alongside families as they land in different places and get settled. And so I do pray. I pray for Josh and for Shanna to find those people. I pray for all of the kids to find just good friends and ones that are just going to encourage them, ones that are just going to they might be look different and talk different, but ones that will understand their hearts and ones that you have ordained for them to meet. And I just pray that you would bless them as they go. Um, give them good last few days here in the States. Let all of the things that need to get done. I know there's probably a million different loose ends to wrap up, but I really pray that you would just let them go with your peace, God, over all of their hearts, all their minds, all their bodies, and with their family members as well. I pray the ones that are leaving, that they are leaving, that you would guard and keep them as well and hold them and comfort them, as it's not easy to let people you love go. And yeah, just pray abundant blessing over their family, um, and that you would just complete the work that you've begun, and that you would just let this be a whole new awesome chapter for your glory. And I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lee. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions before we go? Well, I appreciate you all coming. And yeah, if you have any questions about links or where else you can find us, we do have a YouTube channel. It's called Created to Birth. So there is some updates on there. Some of our ministry calls are on there. Um, yeah, awesome. I'm so encouraged. And I will always share what the Lord is doing through birth, near and far to whoever will listen. So thanks for coming and hearing a little bit about where the Lord is leading our family. Thanks, guys.